Confidence is the indispensable basis for all sorts of business transactions. Without it, commerce between man and man, as between country and country, would, like a watch, run down and stop. When the great Spanish conquistador Pizarro first entered Atahalpa's treasure chamber, he was surrounded by gold, stacked right and left. The needy fellow felt a twinge of misgiving, a lack of confidence as to the genuineness of an opulence so profuse. He went around rapping his knuckles on the shining vases, but they were all gold, pure gold, good gold, sterling gold. And just as those needy minds, who through their own insincerity have no confidence in the liberal geniality of this age, are small Pizarros in their own way, by man's princeliness, they are stunned into a very distrust of it, not believing that geniality could be sincere. I feel trustful. And I believe that trust at first sight is the same as love at first sight. It is the only one, the only true one, the only noble one. It bespeaks confidence. The common occurrences of everyday life never move in one direction, never tell one story, like flags in the trade wind. Hence, if confidence were made dependent on such everyday events, such variables as everyday events, the conviction in thinking minds would be subject to the fluctuations akin to those of a stock market in a long and uncertain war. It is the sign of a right-thinking mind, based less on experience and more on intuition, that rises above the zones of weather. The one who does not feel this trust, what miserable misgivings must be his. And in our wanderings through this vale, how pleasant to know that we do not need to feel startled by wild alarms, trusting in that power which is both willing and able to protect us. Ladies and gentlemen, throw your mistrust away, if only because of the trouble it breeds in you. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and may Providence have all of us in its good keeping. Thank you.
There was this guy, his name was Charlemont, and he was the kind of guy that anybody that would meet him would absolutely fall in love with, as far as a human being can fall in love with another human being. He was charming, good-looking, had a great sense of humor. Everybody liked him. Up until his 29th birthday, something happened. Something came upon this guy, Charlemont. Everybody who was friends with him, he would ignore. All his business partners, he cut all ties with. Those that tried to be nice to him, he shunned as much as those who called him bad names. He disappeared, and they sold all of his material goods. Years had passed, nobody had heard anything about this guy. When all of a sudden, in a bar at St. Louis, Charlemont shows up, dressed nicely, and even more golden than he was before. And even those people that were mad at him, they couldn't help but to not be angry anymore, because he approached them in such a way that they had once known. Everything was somewhat back to normal, except for in the background there was always the whisper of what do you think happened to Charlemont? Time passed and everybody gave him energy, and he just grew and grew and grew to be a greater, grander man. But still everybody wanted to know what had happened. Charlemont threw a really big dinner party at his house. He had a beautiful house, big mansion, great food, I guess. Everybody left except for one of his friends. And his friend said, I think it's time for one of us to ask you what had happened. And the beautiful light that he had in him all of a sudden turned really dark.
Yes, there was a depression. But how came it? Who devised it? The bears. The depression of our stock was solely owing to the growling, the hypocritical growling of the bears. Professors of the wicked art of manufacturing depressions. Gloomy philosophers of the stock market, though false in themselves, they trump up their black panics in the naturally quiet, bullish brightness. For these fellows, whether it be in stocks, politics, morals, metaphysics, religion, be it what it may, again, they trump up their black panics in the naturally quiet, bullish brightness. And do you know from whence this sort of bear gets his sulk? Not from life. No, he gets it from some of those old plays he sees on stage, or some of those old books he finds up in garrets. 10 to 1, he's lugged home one of them musty old philosophy books and sets about stuffing himself with that stale old hay. And thereupon, he thinks it looks wise to be a croaker. He thinks he's taking a stand. For these are the very souls that thrive less upon depression than the fiction of depression. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would just like to have a moment of your time. This won't take too long for me to tell you my story. My name is Thomas Fry, and I'm a good, honest, working man. Up until the 23rd year of my life, they called me Happy Tom. I grew up in New York, where I had a job working as a candlestick maker. And I had gone to the park to discuss with some friends politics. I used to be quite a patriot. When the unfortunate situation I'm about to tell you happened. We were talking and our attention was turned to a rich man with a top hat and a cane. He was walking down the pavement that was being worked on. And the worker, he was chewing tobacco. He had a big wad of tobacco in his mouth, and he was spitting. And the rich man walked by him, and he looked at him, and he started yelling at him for spitting tobacco in the path which the rich man was walking. And the rich man took him, and he pushed him. And obviously the worker got up and pushed him back, and the rich man took a sword. He had one of those cane swords, pulled the sword out, and just started jabbing the poor guy, the worker, like 3 times. The cops came, and they threw us all into prison. Everybody could afford bail except for me. I was thrown into the wet cell, which is a cell in the bottom of the courthouse. It doesn't have any concrete, so all the water comes in. I was like a rat stuck in a bucket. I got really, really sick. 3 days passed, and the worker had died. So I was really sick. They brought me up to the courtroom to tell them what I had seen, and they hung the rich man with a golden chain. And what I mean by a golden chain is he was connected. He had friends, so he got off. And the minute he gets out of the courthouse, they give him a gold chain with a watch on it to celebrate. The officers say, they tell me I can go. I'm like, I can't go, I'm really sick. So they put me in a wheelbarrow and carried me to a local hospital where I was for 3 years surrounded by a bunch of crooks and thieves. I couldn't deal anymore, so I got out. I begged for money so that I could get a ticket to go visit my brother in Indiana. When I arrived, I asked one of the villagers to take me to where my brother was living, and they took me to the graveyard. He died. This isn't usually the type of story I tell people, but since we're all going down the same river, I thought I'd share it with you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to talk to you today about the world's charity. The world's charity is a society whose members shall comprise of representatives from every charity and mission, everywhere. The one object of the society to be the methodization of the world's benevolence. The present system of voluntary and promiscuous contribution to be done away with. And the society to be empowered by various governments to levy annually a single benevolence tax upon all mankind. Now, this tax, according to my tables, would result in the yearly raising of a fund little short of 800 million. In 14 years, there will be devoted to good works the sum of 11,200 millions, which would warrant the dissolution of the society, as with that amount, judiciously expended, not a pauper or heathen, not a single one, would remain the world over. Now, I am no projector of an impossible scheme, but a philanthropist setting forth a philanthropy and a finance that would be practicable. Now, this should frighten no one but a retail philanthropist. What is but 800 millions a year for each of 14 years? More than that sum is yearly expended by mankind, not only in vanities, but in miseries. War. Mankind does not even need to make this money. It is already there. They have but to redirect it from ill to good. And scarce a self-denial is demanded. It is a magnifying, a clarifying of means now in operation. For one thing, missions. I would thoroughly reform them. Christian missions I would quicken with the Wall Street spirit. Yes, for if certain spiritual ends are to be gained through worldly means, then the example of worldly policy and worldly projects should not be slighted. In brief, the conversion of the heathen would, by the world's charity, be let out on contract. So much by bid for converting India, so much for Borneo, so much for Africa. Competition allowed, stimulus given. There would be no lethargy of monopoly. But the main point of this Archimedean money power that would be brought to bear, you see, this doing good to the world by driblets amounts to almost nothing. I am for doing good to the world with a will. I am for doing good to the world once and for all. And then, having done with it. Thank you.